This is a Super Nintendo mini console, and this is not. You might now be curious about what this thing is. I sure was. Let's find out. Recently, I picked up a mixed lot of handhelds and mini consoles from Goodwill, and while most everything included was legit, I was surprised to see that what I thought was a Super Nintendo mini console from the photos was actually a Chinese-made knockoff, one of those 900 games in one deals. I put it back in the shipping box and disregarded it almost immediately. But a short time later I thought, wait, I ignore these things all the time. Why? It's like I have console blindness. I see one of those multi-game things and my brain immediately goes, ugh, nah, and it's instantly forgotten. But you search around and the internet is littered with these types of devices. Hell, back in my day, we had these things called malls where you could buy them from kiosks right in front of Hot Topic. Obviously, they wouldn't be making them if people weren't buying them, so what's the deal with these things? Aside from being legally dubious. Let's dig into it, but specifically in the case of this Gamegnu Super Console Game Amusement System Game SNES Mini China thing. I didn't get the box or any documentation with this, so best I can tell is that it's probably this listing on Amazon. Although with these things, who knows, because they get repackaged and repurposed all the time. Most of the details match though, so let's go with it. As with previous reviews in the series, I want to note that this is not a review of the product itself. The piece of hardware is just the delivery mechanism. Naturally, I will have thoughts about the hardware since I'm going to be using it extensively for a little while, but again, not a product review. Cool? Cool. I will add that I have no interest in tearing this thing down, showing you the chip inside, going that whole technical route. I'm not a teardown guy, I'm not a hardware specifics guy. I'll leave that to others who've most likely done that work already. I don't care about what chips are in this thing, I just want to know about the games that are on them. What the heck are these games? So let's find some stuff I've never seen before. I'm going to use this device to discover some goofy hacks to talk about, to remind myself of some classic games I need to experience for the first time, and recommend which ones you should pluck out and play for yourselves, however you might choose to do that. I mean, if this specific device ends up appealing to you, by all means go for it. I'll link to it down below. But again, I'm looking for a highly curated list of games that I want to go back to. And prepare yourself, we are entering into video games' slimy back alley of hacks, bootlegs, and homebrew nonsense. Some of these are going to be explainable, and many are not. I'll do my best to detail what I can, but there's a lot about this world that's a mystery, except to the people who hacked these games together in the first place. And honestly, I'm not even sure they would remember. One tech observation before we get started. Here in the 21st century, 20 or so plus years into the 21st century, this is a device that requires a 3.5mm to composite cable to connect to a television or monitor. HDMI? Get the hell out of here with that foolishness. We're using camcorder technology, baby. I had no idea what to expect when I powered it on. Well, this here is all you get. A super sexy hot 480i menu screen, thanks to that composite cable, with a short looping bit of music that will drive you mad in only a few minutes. And while my camera might not show off exactly what I'm seeing, I love that it looks great on my little CRT test monitor here and like total poop on the capture PC. You'll see on the menu that this device purports to include 660 games. That's quite the bargain. Immediately I have questions though. Mario 12? Well, we'll get there. Let's go through each one and I'll do some research to attempt to determine what the heck it actually is. Now don't worry, I'm not going to do all 660 games in one video. I'm going to milk this thing forever. And yes, I know many of these games have been around with these goofy names for quite a while now, as the Famiclone scene is older than probably most of you watching this, but they're new to me, and I want to know more. Anyway, ready? Here we go. That was my Chris Pratt impression. Speaking of Super Mario! While the title screen has been altered to what exactly I just don't know, this appears to be Super Mario Bros. Plays normally and seems totally fine. Before we go further, I just want to say that often these kinds of files will have some kind of tweaks or minor changes to the gameplay, sometimes just in one level, and I'm not playing through each one in their entirety just to try and find some microscopic changes in the programming. I'll note anything obvious or something that has been well documented elsewhere. Ninja Turtles 2. This appears to be the accurate version of the TMNT 2 arcade game for the NES. Even the title screen is intact. Super Mario 3, hey guess what? It's Super Mario Bros. 3, even though the title screen just says 3. So I guess that counts as a hack. Perhaps the common belief was, as long as you change the title screen and or the copyright information, you'll be fine, you'll get away with it. That's the only explanation for all the hacked title screens that I can think of. Well, that and consumer deception, of course. It sounds like little kid logic, like when I thought that if you hung up before the 976 call you made had finished, you wouldn't get charged for it. Guess what? You got charged for it. I missed an entire summer of television because of that dumb kid assumption. Also, I've read that info would be removed from title screens to save space on the multi-cart so they could fit more games on them. I'm not sure which explanation to believe at this point, especially since one is just my invention entirely, but the save space thing certainly makes sense. But pirates do crazy things, and any of this stuff is possible. Mario 12. I was expecting and hoping for some kind of bonkers ROM hack after hitting start on Mario 12, but what I got was Yoshi's Cookie with a different title screen. That's a bummer. I mean, it's good if you want to play Yoshi's Cookie. Contra 1. Launching Contra 1 takes you to a 12-in-1 selection screen for various Contra ROM hacky things. You can start regular Contra, you can have the Konami code input for you, you can start with your favorite gun, including what I assume is supposed to say assault gun. Finally, these Contra 2 through 8s will just start you at that particular level, in case you've never been able to get there on your own, even with the 30-man code, but come on. Contra 2. Starting this will launch a 24-in-1 selector for Japan's release of Super Contra, which was called Super C here in the States because the word Contra became controversial. These options are all pretty much the same as the regular ones for Contra, there are just twice as many. Value. Contra 3. Is this gonna be Contra 3 The Alien Wars, our first Super Nintendo game? Nope, it's Contra Force, which came out in 1992, the same year that Contra 3 came out on the SNES. And we've arrived at the first game in this collection that I haven't seen or played before, so let's give it a go. My thought here was to pivot over to the Contra Anniversary Collection on Xbox, because why not earn some cheeves while playing through this new-to-me game? Nope, Contra Force isn't included in the collection. People seem to have opinions on whether or not this is a legit Contra game, Konami included. So my only option is to play the original version via an alternate method, and I'll do it with retro achievements enabled so I can scratch that itch. Oh, what the hell? This is not how Contra works. One of the main criticisms against Contra Force is that there's a ton of slowdown during gameplay, which I noticed right away. More about that in a second. I was able to make some changes in this emulated version to get it to run a little better in some places, but not well enough. It is a badly programmed product. And I'm talking about the actual released game, not just the multi-cart version. As far as the game itself goes, oof, it's, shall we say, really awful. Get your faces on fire now. The slowdown present in the original release is inexcusable and makes the gameplay somewhat sadistic. My favorite part is how the game will be choking along and then it makes you run against a conveyor belt. You'll move so slow you'll start to go backwards in time. Also, the screen will just refuse to scroll sometimes. You're ready to move on and nope, the game just sits there as you run up against the edge of the screen like a mime pretending to run against the wind. And it's filled with those jerk moments where you have to die to learn how to proceed, and then maybe you'll successfully pass that moment the next time. Fuck you. Sure, game. I should have known there were two dudes just off screen there instead of one, even though you wouldn't bother scrolling over far enough to show me. Sure. Contra Force is a chore to play, is fairly short even in comparison to the first two Contra games on the NES. It has a half-assed attempt at a Gradius-style power-up system, it's full of total bullshit, and the only thing that really resembles Contra gameplay is the way that you jump. It was a cancelled non-Contra game called Arkhound that Konami attempted to salvage by slapping the Contra name on it, but they should have just left it cancelled. Or at least get the thing running at full speed before release, holy crap. Now this is some elevator action. The NES cartridge for Contra Force seems to go for $150 or more on eBay, and you wonder why Konami just doesn't want any of that money. It's weird. All this retro stuff is weird. Sure, I get that maybe you don't want to release a bad game in a compilation of good games, but if I was a rights holder and I saw those old carts going for that much, I'd still get in on that. They're probably all going to collectors who are never actually going to play the carts, but still, get in on that. And going back to that Contra Anniversary Collection for a second, I played through the arcade version of Contra there the other day, and that's a slowdown nightmare as well, so I really don't get the hesitation about throwing Contra Force in there. Get in on that! So far these are all just NES games, making the SNES shell and controllers irrelevant. And I have the feeling they're all going to be NES or Famicom games because obviously I can't see this thing managing to switch emulators on the fly. Clearly there's just an NES on a chip in this thing. That kinda sucks. However, one benefit is that the 2 extra buttons on the controllers work as turbo buttons. It's always a plus to have those. With all the extra buttons though, you'd figure there'd be some configuration of button presses that lets you easily get back to the menu. Nope. You have to hit reset on the console itself. An authentic retro experience, I guess. Another note about these controllers, they feel bad. Up doesn't seem to work very well at all, and you need up to work for just about everything. Now again, I did get this used, so it's possible that they worked fine new and then got lots of use over the last couple of years, but I have my doubts. Also, Player 1 plugs into the second controller port. That's not confusing at all. Even worse is that while they appear to be compatible with the official SNES Minis controllers, they in fact are not. Plugging one in causes some kind of power drain that kills the device until you unplug it again. So we're stuck with this garbage. Anyway, back to the list. Contra 6, they've apparently skipped Contras 4 and 5, whatever those would have been, and landed on Contra 6, which launches as Super Contra 6, a hack of Contra Force, or as we've just learned to call it, Contra 3. Characters that appeared in the opening cutscene have all been replaced with an oppressive Super Contra 6 logo, while they've all been changed in the select screen to more famous characters like Rambo and, Bill from Contra. At some point this hack was hacked to include even more changes, so I have no idea which version this might actually be, and I'm not at all enough of a fan of Contra Force to try and find out. Contra 7. This pretty rad looking title screen apparently says Super Military Soul according to my translation app, but it's supposed to be Super Fighting Spirit, maybe? Anyway, it's Super Contra 7. And I'm not exactly sure how to classify this one. Yes, it's a bootleg, but it's also an original game just with stolen assets from not only a bunch of Contra games, but also Final Fight? So what are we calling that? Technically it's a Famicom game made in 1996, and what the hell, I like Contra. Let's see what these hackers thought would make a good Contra game. We're just gonna power through it and see what this bootleg ass video game is. And so far it is a Contra, but in the city. It's the Predator 2 of Contra games. And yeah, it's a bunch of hacked together Contra bits, and there's an expected lack of polish, but if you'd put this in front of me when I was a kid and said, here, have more Contra, I'd have been totally into it. It's fine for what it is. Completely fine. You do Contra things and shoot Contra stuff. It looks like a Contra game, and it mostly sounds like a Contra game. If you miss the simplicity of the first 2 Contras and kinda want a big ol' messy remix of them, add this one to your collection and check it out. Its biggest drawback is the music, which, if this is ripped from another game, I apologize to that game's composer, but it is dreadful. This music is maddening. It in no way inspires you to kick ass. It instead inspires you to put on a podcast while you play. Now, fun fact, when I went looking for this specific game, I found 11 different versions of it. 11 different versions of a bootleg. It's wild out there, folks. Contra 8, of course it's Contra 8, what else would it be? Oh, it's Super Contra 7, but with a lame English title screen. Okay, well, there's one of those 11 different versions I just mentioned. Technically a different game, I guess. I spent a minute or two with it, and it seems to be pretty much unchanged aside from that title screen. Mario 14, well, it seems like we've skipped Mario 13 and headed straight into the 14th installment of the Mario franchise, which in this case is a hack of the third Kid Niki game, which itself only came out on the Famicom. I've never understood these kinds of hacks, putting Mario into everything, but here's another one if you're into it. I've never played the third Kid Niki game, but since it's a Japanese exclusive and that will probably pose a problem or two, I'm gonna move past it for now. Mortal Kombat 4 with a C, Combat. Well, someone wants you to think that this is MK4 for the NES. It's actually a ripoff of a hacked-together version of MK3 for the NES, a game that doesn't exist in the actual NES library. It's quite bare bones with only 7 characters, and of course it plays like garbage. Mario 10. This is Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu, but with Mario's head in place of Jackie Chan's. Why would you do this? Anyway, that's all this is. At the very least, I wish all these double-digit Marios were in the right order. And this is just NES Mario Brothers, but with the title screen pretty much erased. Otherwise, it seems to be the same game. The next 3 are Hudson's Adventure Island 1 through 3, although the first one is the Japanese version of the game, while the other 2 appear to be the English versions. While I'm not familiar with any of the games in this series, we're not going to cover them here in this video. Soon though. Probably. Soon. Ninja Gaiden 1. Oh, we're so close to being right here. Selecting Ninja Gaiden 1 launches a Tecmo game called Shadow Warriors, which is what Ninja Gaiden was called in Europe. Why did it take Europe over 2 years to get Ninja Gaiden? Was it because of things like the ninja weapons that authorities in the UK seem to be completely freaked out by? It gets even weirder because it seems as though all the power-ups are removed in this version of the game, even though they are there in the official European version. Usually there are these lanterns that you break all throughout the levels and obtain bonus stuff. Those are all gone except for one that I guess the hackers accidentally left in. It's a weird thing and I'm not even sure what the point of it is. Tank 90. This is a hacked out mode from the larger Famicom game called Battle City. It's a tank game. The hackers have added a couple of additional weapons to the game and possibly more levels as well. I'm not familiar with Battle City, but I'm not starting with a hacked version when I can just go find the actual one, which I will do later. I feel like Battle City is going to come up a lot, so let's save that one for now. And finally, at number 20, which is where we will wrap up for today, it's Urban Champion, but with the copyright information removed. And this serves to remind me that I don't think I've ever played Urban Champion. Let's go ahead and check it out. Urban Champion is an early Famicom game, copyright 1984, so it predates the release of the NES here in the States. It then came out during the second wave of releases for the system in mid-1986, although an arcade version was available in 1985. That's where I remember seeing Urban Champion, if my memory is working correctly. I certainly had no experience with the home version, I never owned it, and none of my friends did either. Based very loosely on the Nintendo Game & Watch release Boxing, you play as a blue-haired street tough fighting a green-haired street tough. He must have been grousing about your mom or your shoes or something because all you want to do is sock him in the kisser, mush him in the face or the tummy enough times with either your light or heavy punch, and he falls down a manhole. A lady will shower you with confetti. You are the Urban Champion. The only thing really wrong with Urban Champion is that you've seen all there is to see in less than 5 minutes or so. The objective is to just win as many rounds as possible. Your high score is your highest number of rounds reached. That's it. You do eventually hit a number where you're actually crowned champion though. Best part of the action is when the cops roll by as you both retreat to opposite corners of the street and pretend like nothing is going on. And when you run out of time, the cops return and will arrest whoever was doing worse in that particular round. It's got a touch of charm. It's just very basic. As far as availability goes, Urban Champion was not on the NES Mini and is not currently available on Switch Online either, which is weird because it was on both the Wii and Wii U virtual consoles. Maybe Nintendo took the many negative contemporary reviews to heart and decided not to keep the memory of this one alive. Again, I think it's totally fine, but it's very, very slight. Still, not filling out your online service with everything in your back catalog seems silly. Release all the things, Nintendo. So I've got a small list of things to check out in the future from games 1 through 20 here, including the Adventure Island and Kid Niki franchises, and possibly Battle City as well. But as far as which things I would pull off this device and add to a personal collection, I think so far I can only go with Super Contra 7 there, which is totally fine as long as you know what it is going in. It's short, but it's very Contra-y, and that makes it worthy to revisit in the future. And why Super Contra 7 instead of Super Contra 8, which is in English? Because the title screen for Super Contra 7 just looks better. Simple. And obviously there are some great games here like Mario Brothers in both regular and super form, Contra and Super Contra, but you already know that, right? You don't need me to tell you they're good. They're good. Play them. I am interested to find more stuff like that Super Contra 7 though. I'm not going to specifically go looking for them, I just hope to discover them naturally like we did today. I want to see what weird things people have cobbled together as opposed to just putting Mario's head in everything. Put Mario's head in Smash.